for all these valuable comments and suggestions and answers. I did promise the audience the few questions will be answered. We have a number of them, but we have surely run out of time. And I know some speakers are taking this way beyond midnight, but I don't want to disappoint all the people who ask these questions. So I'm going to choose 3 sets of questions, try to quickly wrap them up. The first set is on IALF, and I'll just take the quick liberty to answer a few quick questions from certain members. For example, I see Sherizad Dubash has asked a question on when these instruments we were speaking about in the introduction going to come about. A simple answer is by the end of this financial year, first quarter of next financial year, you will see all the instruments ready, and we hope to work very quickly to get them. A similar question by Satish, who says, what is IALF going to help? Which kind of activities? I think one is, of course, self-regulation for the market, bringing best practices, spreading the awareness and education, and of course, being a body for people to ideate, regulate themselves, resolve their differences. I think it's a one-stop solution for the industry. At least we hope to be that. But now moving to the legal or the financial questions which have come in. I think 2 good questions come in from it, and both, of course, to the funding community. And I'm open to anyone from the funding community to volunteer. I think a set of questions are tied up in my mind. One is about funding defendants who don't have a counterclaim. Very closely connected to it is to funding tax disputes for the taxpayer. Do you think these 2 disputes sound very similar economically? Do you think these 2 kind of disputes can be funded where you're not getting a claim, but you're not going to pay money at the end of the day? Anyone?
I'm happy to comment briefly on the first part of that funding defences. It can be done, and we do look at it. The most obvious way that it can be done is if there's a counterclaim. But I think the question said if there's no counterclaim. And another way that it can be done in a relatively simple fashion is if it's packaged together in a portfolio, as I described, where you do have some claim value within the portfolio, and the defence costs can be offset against that, and we can take a return on that investment from within the portfolio. We often look at defence funding also where the dispute is over the preservation of an asset or over the ownership of a particular asset. And in those circumstances, where the defence is successful, that asset may be able to be leveraged or liquidated in a way that can pay a return to us. It becomes more complex when success is simply resisting a claim for damages, say. And in those circumstances, you'd need to come up with some sort of measure of success, which results in a calculation of a fee. And that is a more tricky scenario to work in a way that appeals to the client seeking funding. It's not something I've done, but it's something that I have certainly thought about, and we're looking at ways of doing. Maybe I'll let someone else address that point or the tax point.
I hope, Manvedra, your question is answered well. And on the tax point, if anyone wants to quickly chip in, I think Sindhu. No? Okay, I saw your mute off.
Not on the tax point, but on the same point of defense side funding, I think so long as you can find there's an income stream or something valuable that comes out of the defense, I see no reason why we can't do defense funding. And I think even where that's not the case, so long as the defendant rather has the ability to pay an agreed sort of success, if we agree what the successful outcome is and the defendant has the cash to actually either by liquidation of assets or via its own cash reserves pay the returns, I don't see why we can't have defense funding in those cases either.
Anyone on tax, or we move forward to the next question? Dilip.
Having lived in a zero tax environment for 10 years, it might be a little out of my ballpark, but I do think it would be pretty intriguing to look at some tax cases. And I think, it depends on is it an issue of the tax liability and then being able to reduce the liability and looking at that delta of the reduction? And, you know, does the claimant have, or the party you're representing have other assets that can be monetized? So we haven't seen it, but I think we'd be quite intrigued to look at these kind of things.
Right, and I'm going to close with the last question, and I hope, I'm sorry for not being able to answer all, and I hope, Sudarshan, your question is answered well by what Dilip said.
I just wanted to add
Yes.
to the tax piece.
Yes, yes.
Is that, you know, at least what happens in an international arbitration, though it relates to tax, especially the ones you go under BIT, you're actually going on fair and equitable treatment. So you're asking for reparations, actually. You're not really just fighting. So there is invariably an opportunity to look at funding because there is a claim being made.
Right.
So while it's based on a substratum of a tax dispute, but what you're actually fighting on is you know, as I said, it's fair and equitable treatment, and there's always reparation involved for the losses that you may
100%.
have had because of that dispute.
I know Vodafone, Kane, Vedanta, all are good examples of you need to pay the money if you bring prohibitive taxations into your system, and that's a very good example to this. I think the last question, and I'm going to wrap up with this. I see people are slowly dwindling away, and I think we have 5 minutes already above time. So the last question, and I think any of the funders who want to pick it up, it's a very fair question. It says, would you charge us higher to fund something in India versus funding something in, for example, United Kingdoms or USA?
If you allow me to jump in, surely not, because our job is to take good and strong cases, so meritorious, etc. Why would we price it higher because we are to do with an Indian claimant rather than a UK claimant? It makes no sense. So for us, it's absolutely not. And I would say that the remuneration is not for us a question of pricing the risk, but to get the conviction of the solidity, strength of a case.
Any more comments to add to that? All right, so
just one comment. Would you consider making it any lower? Would you fund an Indian party at a lower rate than an English party? And I ask that because sometimes the paying capacity is not it's not comparable to a Westerner. Is that a trick question?
We had to when we came to the Gulf because everyone thought we were crazy offering our service and putting money into it. So look, we had to prove the concept. So we did take lower returns than what we were making in the United States. To the question of India, would we charge higher? Depends on Montec's fees, really.
Montec, you're the culprit in the room. Everyone's pointing towards you. I think it's a message. And I think on that note, I would really like to thank everyone who's come from all across the globe to make this session such a success. I really thank every member of the working group to be giving their time, not only to make IALF a body for voicing their opinions, but a self-regulation body which can spearhead the success of litigation finance in India. And I look forward to working with all of you all in the coming future. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening. See you next time.